Welcome back, Math 30-1. So this is the third video in this lesson here. Pretty easy little lesson. We're just going to do a bunch of graphing here. We're going to add, subtract, divide graphs. And I pretty much already said what I needed to say about adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing graphs. You're really just, because this is just equal to y, and this is just equal to y, you're really just adding y values together, or you're multiplying y values together, or dividing y values, or you're doing all that stuff. So in this case, we're just going to, I want to use this to graph plus and the times. You can see here, both there. Let's combine this. Let's just say this top graph here goes with this bottom one here. So I'm going to add these two graphs together. I've got f of x here being the darker line. I've got g of x being the lighter line. I'm really just going to add their y values together. So I'm just going to pick random spots and say, okay, what is f of 0 plus g of 0? So I'm going to add those together. So f of 0, I'll use a different color here, is way down here at -5. I'm going to add that to g of 0, which is 0. And just look at the y values. And my new point is going to be, if I zoom out here maybe, is going to be at -5, right there. So that's going to be my new point. And you're just going to go through each individual point as you go and just add them together. So you notice that when my x values are equal to 1, they're both -4. So you're going to add two -4s together. Sorry, -2, sorry, and get -4. Point right there. Okay. Right about here, when x is equal to 2, that's equal to 1. I'm adding this to a -4. 1 plus -4 is -3. It's like a pretty straight line here so far. Okay. If I add this is 4 plus -6, so that's -2. Yeah, it looks like it's going to be a pretty straight line. I'm adding two linear lines together. I'm going to get a straight line here. Okay, let's look and see what happens on the other side. At -1, I have 2 plus, oh, it kind of goes off my graph here a little bit. I don't know if that goes down to -8 or not. But yeah, it looks like it would, because it looks like a pretty straight line on this side. So that's what my graph looks like there. Now, I'm going to just do it, but just why not? I'm going to graph, this is the red graph. So that's what the red graph is going to be. I'm going to graph the blue graph here. That's supposed to be blue, stupid thing. Okay. I'm going to graph a blue graph where I multiply these two together. So I'm going to graph a new graph here. So this is my legend here. Okay. So I'm going to multiply all the y values together and see what happens. So I got two linear lines here. When I multiply two linear lines, I'm going to assume I'm going to get x times x. I'm going to get x squared. So this is probably going to turn into a quadratic here. So let's see. 0 times -5, I get 0. That's this point here. -2 times -2 is +4. I'm going to point up there. -4 times 1. -4 times 1. Yeah, -4 times 1 is going to be, what is that? -4 times 1. Why am I blanking on that? It's going to be -4 way down here somewhere. Okay. Over here, we got -8 times 2. Well, that's going to be pretty big. Some other points here. You can see another point right here where there's a 0. 0 times anything. So just slightly off the 2 is another 0. So my graph might look something like this. Not quite perfectly symmetrical here. It's going to look kind of like a little quadratic. It's going to look pretty ugly the way I drew it. But that's pretty much it. My max point looks like it should be on this side over here somewhere. Goes up and back down. So that's what my quadratic would look like in this situation, I think. There you go. It's kind of cleaned up now, make it look nice. Looking nice. Okay. Let's see what happens on this one here. They want us on this one to just do the original graph. So let's call that, let's make it red. So let's go multiply all the y values. So here we got 0 times 0. So my point is going to be 0. This point right here, it's 2. They're both at 2. Both graphs are 2. So when y or x is equal to 2, I get a 4 on that side. I also get on this side, when x is equal to negative 2, they're both 2. So I also get a 4 on that side too. This one here, you're multiplying these two together at this point. Those two pieces right there, that's going to be 1. It's going to be 1 times a half. So it's probably going to be somewhere around about half there. On the other side, it looks pretty symmetrical. So I'm going to get a graph that looks like this. Looks like that. Any other points that I can graph? Here's a 3 times something. That's beyond my graph. Even like a 3 times 3, it would be off my graph. This is a 3 times, I don't know what that is, a 2.5 or so. It looks approximately what that would look like there. Now, if I were to add these together, I would get a graph that just looks pretty much the same shape. It'd just be a little bit steeper. So you're just adding y values. That's all we're doing. Okay, so here's a couple more examples here. We're going to add some y values. So I go f plus g. That's just the same as saying f of x plus g of x. You're just going to add your y values. So at negative 8, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So negative 8 is the very end here. And we're going up to positive 4. I'm just going to add my y values. So I got 2 plus negative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah, negative 8. So that's going to be a negative 6 there. At negative 4, we also have a negative 6. At 2 here, negative 2, we have a positive 4 and a negative 4, so we get a 0. And then at 0, we have a 0 and a negative 6. So it looks like we get another negative 6 there. And then we have a negative 2 and a negative 7 at 1. Negative 2, negative 7, so that's a negative 9. And then we also got a negative 9. So let's see what that graph looks like when we add these together. So when I add this on, so this is going to be right here. So I'm adding 2 to that. And then this point is going to be right there. Looks pretty good. And then this one's going to be down here. And then we're going to cross through a negative 6 as well right there. Not very good at drawing straight lines with this tool here. Looking pretty. There we go. That's what the graph would look like when you add them together. Now we talked about, the domain and range here. So my domain is going to be from negative 8 over to positive 4, including those two values. You notice that they're solid dots. If they were hollow dots, you wouldn't include them, kind of like points of discontinuity. And my range, my max point on this, my min point on this graph is a negative 9. I'm going to run that all the way up to 0. Nope, yeah, up to 0. Y, E, R. Okay. So now we're going to subtract the graphs. And I talked about this before, but it's also the order of subtraction is very important. So you want to make sure that you're subtracting in the proper order. But if there's nothing to subtract it with, it's undefined. So you notice that if I'm going to go f minus g, f is the top graph here, and a minus g, there's nothing down here. There's no g. So at negative 9, if I subtract the 2, I get undefined. That part of the graph doesn't exist. It doesn't exist all the way up to negative 5. And if I subtract these two, so I get 2 minus negative 8. I believe that's negative 8 still, right? 1, 2, 6, 7. 2 minus negative 8. So I'm going to go 2 minus a negative 8, which turns to a positive 10. So there's a new point here at positive 10, so way up here. Yeah, right up there. Okay, then I'm going to have -1 minus a -8, or sorry, 1 minus a -8, sorry. So that turns to a 9. So that just goes down to here. Then at 0, 0, or at 0 here, we got a -2 minus -4. So -2 minus -4 is going to be +2. So right there. So right now we have a graph that looks like this. It's supposed to be a straight line. Okay. The next at 3 here, we have -2 minus -7. So that turns into 5. Is that right? 5? Yeah, okay. 5 right there. So the graph's going to look like that. And then down here, because I'm going to have an undefined number again, I'm going to have undefined. I would have undefined minus something. So the graph doesn't exist there. So my graph now fits between -5 to 3. I don't know if you noticed the flickering of my marker there. It's just because once I get too much ink on the page, it decides to kind of lag out just a little bit. I don't know if my camera's still lagging out. The min point here is 2. My max is 10. Y. So just abstract the y values. Now the same thing goes with multiplying. So this is a solid dot. It's a solid dot there. So I'm multiplying these two things together. If they're undefined, like over here on the right side of the graph, we're at -6. If it doesn't exist, undefined times anything is still undefined. So now you're just multiplying these values out. So my f value is 4 times my -1. So this ends up being -4. So there's a point right here at -4. Okay. And then I'm going to have 4 times -2. So that's -8. So this point's now going to be a -8. Oh, a bit beyond my graph here. 2, 4, 6, 7, 8. So it's going to be somewhere down here. Yeah, too bad. Okay, at 0, I have 1 times -2. So I get -2 here. So my graph is looking something like this so far. Catching my dots. And then at 3, I have 1 times -3. So that becomes -3 right there. There you go. Now my domain and range, because that undefined piece, now my graph is kind of cut off a little bit. Oops, sorry. But I do start at -6. I run all the way over to 3. XCR. That's supposed to be an R. I don't know what that was. Okay. And my range, my lowest point here looks like a -8. And I'm going to go up to -2. Okay. So I'm going to finish off this page, and then I'm going to stop it for this video and make it this a 4-parter apparently, because we have quite a bit more to go. And then we'll do compositions. This is a rather short chapter, but I am spreading it out a little bit because there's lots to talk about when it comes to these kind of graphs. Okay. Here we're going to divide. Now, dividing is very important because we might end up at a point where we divide by 0. But in this case, you notice that this graph down here never equals 0. Like the y value is never 0. So I'm not going to run into a problem there. But I do run into a problem if the graph doesn't exist. Like over at -6, can't divide by undefined, so it's undefined, right? And the same thing with +6, can't divide by undefined, so that's also undefined. But I can divide these other ones. I can go, it looks like that's 8, 2, 4, 6, 8. Yeah, so we've got 8 divided by -2. I don't know why I'm writing on my calculator. 8 divided by -2 equals -4. So this point here is at -4 now. I should change my color. Go back to red. Okay, so that's -4. Here I have 8 divided by negative 1. So that's negative 8. Right about there, negative 8. Okay. Here we have 6. Is that 6? 2, 4, 6 divided by negative 1. 6 divided by negative 1, that's equal to negative 6. Put that in there. 2, 4, 6. Awesome, right there. Here I have 4 divided by negative 1 again. So that's negative 4. Right there. Pretty good. And then my last point that I can actually do here, I got 4 divided by negative 2. 4 divided by negative 2 equals negative 2. There's what my graph looks like right there. Pretty good. My domain and range. So my domain, I can only go from negative 4 all the way up to 4. My graph doesn't exist otherwise. Oops. And my range is going from my lowest point, which is negative 8, all the way to my upper point, which is negative 2. And my graph is really lagging out here. Okay, for this next one here, it doesn't specify actually graphing the graph. It just wants the domain and range. Well, it's probably best if we tried to graph it first so I can get the domain and range. It's going to be pretty crammed in here. But here I'm going to add these two graphs. So when I add these two graphs, the graph doesn't exist. So you notice that g of x doesn't exist over here. There's no g of x and there's no fx over there. My graph is going to be in between here because that's where both graphs exist. That's the only place I can actually do my math. So I'm going to add these two, so positive 2, negative 2, but you notice that's a hole there. So because that's undefined, that's where that's going to start. There'll be a hole at 0 there. And then this one's going up 4, this one's down 3. So that's going to stop there. So my graph is going to be this little tiny thing right in there. So my domain, I'm going to just do this as interval notation here. My domain starts at 3, but ends at 5. So a little square bracket there, but you notice that this hole here, because this start off the hole, I can't actually have 3, but I can have just to the side of it. My range is going to have the lowest point to be 0 and my upper point to be 1. So the same thing as round brackets there. Okay, so I'm just going to use interval notation from now on. For this graph, let's see what happens. So there's nothing over here. So I know my domain is going to start at negative 4 and run to positive infinity. Because it just keeps on going. Both graphs keep on going. There's no restrictions on this side over here. It just keeps on going and going and going. So I'm not too concerned about that. Now I just want to know what my range is. So 3 up. So my starting point here on the left goes 3 up and 2, 4, 6 down. So negative 3. So I'm going to start at negative 3 right there. Now is this graph going to continue going up or is it going to just kind of flatten out? Let's double check here. We got to pick a good point. Let's pick this one here. 2 up, 2, 4, 5. Good flat line there. There's 2 up. 1 up. Yeah, that's pretty good. That's a flat line. This is going to be 0. These two are both the same, about 1.5. So that's going to be there. Yeah, so it's going to be a flat line right here. Okay. Oh, oops, I was supposed to be subtracting these, so it's not going to be a flat line there. Why not subtract these instead, rather than add them? I was adding them by accident, sorry guys. Now my eraser's not seeming to be working very well here. Okay, there we go. Okay, so let's subtract these two values instead. So f, so 3 minus negative 6, so that actually ends up being a 9 up here. Okay, so this would be 2 minus negative 5, so there'll be a 9 up here. Be 1, oh, it won't be, what am I talking about? 2 minus negative 5 is 7. 2 minus negative 5, 7, right about there, okay. Then 1 minus -4 is a 5. So right about there. This would be a 0 here because they're both the same value. Let's do this one here. 0 minus that would be 3. You can kind of see this. It's a nice linear line here. This would be -1 minus -2, so that's +1. Okay, so it actually becomes this kind of graph. So it starts here. If you're adding them, it would have been a flat line. So that's what my graph looks like. It's supposed to be a straight line. Kind of horrible at drawing lines there. So my range is going to start, or it's going to end at -infinity at the very bottom of my graph. That's way down here. And then my top of my graph is 9. And it includes that point there. Okay, there we go. So the next part here, I'm going to multiply my points together. Okay, so my graph is undefined here. Technically undefined here as well, but let's just multiply those together. So what do we get? 2, 4, 5 times -2, so that's -10. So I'm going to put a little hole there at -10. So I'm multiplying these. Here we got 0 times -2, so that's going to be 0 here. Over here I got the same thing. It just kind of looks reciprocal. -2 times 2, 4, 5. Yep. So that's going to be -10 right there. Now I just have to figure out what does it look like. Is it going to be just upside down quadratic? Let's double check here. You just times it by -2, so it seems like it's going to flip it over and just stretch it out. But let's look for some other key points we play with here. So like here, this is 3. 3 times -2 is -6. 2, 4, 6, right about there. And then it'll be the same point on this side over here. Let's find another good point. Like here, yeah, it looks pretty close. That looks like almost a 1, so that's going to be right about there. And that looks like a 1, so that's going to be right about there. Okay. So the graph looks more or less like this. I'm sorry. Oops, sorry. This doesn't end. Doesn't keep on going up forever. Sorry if my cursor doesn't really register when I'm moving it around. It might not register on the screen. So I'm going to try to keep it so that you have a nice big cursor. So at least registers that it's changing. Okay. Domain. So it starts off on the left side at 0, but doesn't equal 0. Ends off at 10, but it equals 10. And my range, I'm just write it down the bottom. The lowest point of my graph includes the point of -10. The other side doesn't, but this side does over here. So this is included. So that's important. And the top part of my graph looks like it includes 0. So I'm just going to go up to 0. Okay. Here I'm just going to add them all. Now when you're adding them, if one graph is undefined, they're all undefined. So I can't really start there. So I know that my graph is going to at least start, and they seem like they're all going off this direction forever. So my domain, so I'm adding them together. So my domain is going to start at -2. I'm going to go all the way to positive infinity. My range, I just have to figure out which way is this graph going here. So I'm going to pick some points here. So like this point here is at +7. Plus 0 plus -7. So this graph is going to start right here. Oh, red. Stupid thing. That's better. It's red. Right there. It's going to start there. It's harder to find some of these other graphs here. Try to figure out what's happening. They're all kind of different slopes. Nothing really good. I don't really see any really good points here. I guess a 9, that's a 3, so that's 12 minus 8 here. So ish, 12 minus an 8. So right about here, it ends up being like a 6-ish or 4-ish here. Right there. Because they're all pretty much linear lines. I'm just going to assume that these are going to be linear. So the graph's going to look something like that. I think that's what it's going to look like. Yeah. Oh, maybe not. Let's find some more points. Just double check that. Okay. That's an 8 there. That's like a 1.5. So 8 plus 1.5 minus, what point is that? Oh, never mind. It's not going down. It's going up. That makes more sense now. So where I was thinking about before, at this point would actually be right about here. That makes more sense now. Okay, so it's going to go this way. Yeah, okay. So my range here is going to be my bottom of my graph, not including 0, going up forever. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to stop the video there. I'm just going to try to fix my computer a little bit so it doesn't lag out so much, and I'm going to do the last video. We're going to do a few more of these multiplying, dividing, so the next two graphs have a divide, and there's a reason I did the divide for those ones. And I'll finish off this video series for this lesson. Okay, I'll see you then.